waves swell to 5 metres, trapping a small fishing boat that's desperately trying to make its way to shore. The waves slam the boat, tossing it from side to side. It's a battle, and right now the waves are winning. Just when you think it looks like it's going to make it in, the torrid surf rocks the boat and rolls it onto its side. But somehow, amazingly, the boat rights itself and makes it safely to shore. Looking at this video again, it's hard to believe that the only thing this boat suffered was taking on too much water.
But if you are a professional fisherman and you look again at this clip, you will see it quite differently. If you work bar harbours for your living, you live with the possibility of broaching all the time. You respect the sea and what it can do. So for you, this sort of thing is not really a proper topic for a light entertainment show. And looking at this, you know that these people would not have survived unless they'd got everything right and had been totally and properly prepared. Luck on its own would not have been enough. But then it's surprising how often luck seems to come to those who prepare themselves properly for it.
Okay, what happened was we just lined up the bar as normal. We were geared up, you know, we sort of expected that we would have probably had a bit of water flying around at some stage. And what happened was we lined up and made our approach and took quite a big sea on the outer bar. The vessel broached quite hard and took the trawl door away, or the trawl door actually started fishing, I think, when the vessel laid over, and took our top and bottom bridles with it. It was a bit hard to believe for a start. Like we'd come, we was on the leads. We'd had, like, it had been a rough crossing, but it was nothing out of control. But everything sort of happened so fast. After that, there wasn't a great deal of time to reflect on it at all. It was happening. It was just happened so fast, really.
We were a little bit wary about what was going to happen, so we came in to have a look. And we were being half to 3/4 of a mile away from the bar, and my crew's job was to sit on the table in the back of the wheelhouse and look out the back window. And all I heard him say was, "Jesus Christ," and I sort of looked quick over my shoulder, and here it was, about 25 feet high, curled over the top of us. So the stern swung around the bow, and that put us broadside on, and then the wave actually broke on top of us. That filled the whole decks. The next wave hit us then, and hit us on this quarter here, and that took that first window out there. In that split second, we were up to our waist in water inside the wheelhouse. Then the next wave hit us, and that took the next two out. So we were minus all windows, but by that time we'd actually got round our head back into the sea. And when we broke out to sea there, we wore it through the windows there for about a quarter of an hour, 20 minutes. And as soon as I see a wave coming over the top, I'd tell them to get their heads down, and when she came over the top, I'd get my head down. But the amount of force we'd used, I'd actually pulled the console away from the front of the wheelhouse by about 2 inches. And we just sat out there for another 24 hours until we came in. And the next day it was just a long, greasy swell, and it was quite a joy to put my feet on land, I can tell you that. No, there was just too much on to actually get nervous about anything. The main thing was keeping that head to the sea. After all was said and done, I was the skipper, and I had those 2 other jokers' lives in my hands, and they trusted me with my judgment.
Yeah, it was the first bar I'd ever crossed, and I planned to be very careful about it and take it carefully and make sure everything was right. I thought I knew what I was in for, but there's nothing really teaches you like actually doing it, you know. You can hear all the stories of what you should do, but it's not till you're there and you do it yourself that you appreciate what's involved. We were out fishing, it got rough and everybody headed in, and probably about 8 boats had gone in before me, and it was a bit rough for me from the first time, but just because the people who'd done it before were quite happy about it, I followed the crowd and raced in there and did my thing too, and learned a lot in about 10 minutes, yeah, a lot more than I expected. Oh, I got on a big wave and took off down it, and it was quite enjoyable till I went down the front of it and slewed around sideways and started walking up the side of the wheelhouse, you know. She laid over that far as we went down the front of this wave that I ended up with 1 foot on here and 1 on the floor, sort of on the verge of climbing up the wall, sort of thing. It totally out of control. Didn't know what was going on. Well, I knew what was going on, but I didn't have any control of it. Yeah. But the boat survived, and I learned a lot, and the next time I went across that bar I felt a lot more confident about it. Yeah, the more I cross it, the more I'm determined not to have dangerous crossings. You know, so.
Well, basically, like I said, I made a mistake. I really wanted to go home. We approached the bar 2 hours before the top of the tide. We knew it was going to be touch and go. Had a look, didn't like the look of it, so we steamed out another mile or 2 back to safe water, and basically thought, rightio, after an hour and a half, we've got half an hour before the tide's going to start ebbing, we've got to go in a bit closer and have one more look. So we got in a bit close, and like I said, one of the big green waves was coming in behind us, and I didn't see it. As it was, the first one went under us. We went up on the top of it and slid down the back of it, and I was holding my breath, and there was another 4 or 5 behind them. So we kept going slow. The 4th one actually broke across the deck. The deck was full of water, the boat shook it off. We'd broached. We got caught by another one, side on, filled the deck up. That was alright, she eventually shook it off. There was a bit of leakage around the windows and that from that one, and a little bit coming in the back door. So it was, you know, to me it was a pretty close brush with death, and
I wasn't too happy with myself, having made a mistake. I think everybody makes mistakes, and it's getting past those mistakes and carrying on with your life and thinking, I won't do that again. You know, learn from your mistakes is the biggest thing. If you don't learn from your mistakes, the sea will take you.
The sea has taken many lives from the river entrances and bar harbours around New Zealand. The biggest single disaster happened here in the Manukau Heads in 1863. HMS Orpheus struck the bar, and although the weather wasn't that bad, it broke up within a few hours when the flood tide set in. Out of 259 people on board, 189 lost their lives. It's still New Zealand's worst maritime disaster. This is the approach to the Kaipara Bar, further north. In the early days, wooden scows like the Te Aroha operated over the bar, bringing new immigrants and their stores in and carrying kauri timber out to the growing cities of New Zealand and Australia. Many of these vessels, and many lives, were lost on the bar. But recent statistics are hardly anything to be proud of either. In the 10 years or so before this video was made, recreational boaties had bar crossing incidents here. In 5 of them, somebody died. Over that same 10-year period, commercial fishermen were involved in bar crossing incidents here, and there were 11 fatalities. Professionals may cross the bar more often than amateurs and in much more difficult conditions, but nevertheless twice as many of them died over that 10 years. And a disproportionate number of incidents, especially fatal, happened here in Westport and Greymouth. It's important to keep this in perspective. Every year there are thousands of successful bar crossings, many of them in difficult weather. But even one fatality is one too many. 11 in 10 years, though, is a real worry. For the fact is that upon investigation, many of these incidents, and others where nobody actually died, were avoidable. People did things that they shouldn't have, or they didn't do things that they should. And if you are truly professional, you know that. One thing that all crossing the bar stories have in common is that at that moment, you and your vessel are most at risk, especially in between the tip heads, which is the very last place you want anything to happen. But events there often start further out, and incidents often grow from simple beginnings.
And yeah, we were lucky that we kept our steering. Everything just kept going as normal till we were virtually in between the tip heads, and that's when the rudder got fouled up and we started having a few problems. The top bridle, which is just a length of wire, and it had a short length of chain, probably a metre chain and a G-clamp, got entangled in the rudder, and when we got in between the tip heads, it just seized up the steering. We had no steering at all. We're very lucky that the Corsair's got 2 engines, so with 2 engines we managed to keep her off the rocks.
Absolutely within the best tradition of getting yourself out of trouble. But all incidents on the bar happen close to shore.
Yeah, we were already in the river. We'd come over the bar earlier.
So it's almost impossible to prevent other people becoming involved, widening the impact of any incident.
And we sat in the river while we waited for him to come in, but when he wore the big wave, well, we weren't aware that there was a problem until afterwards when he called me. And at that stage we turned back down the river and headed towards him and had the crew preparing tow lines.
Comes the Cascade to the rescue, see if you'll get here in time. Bad situation.
The Cascade was on the way back down the river to help us out. But with the working the engines ahead and astern, we managed to chop off the wire and free the rudder and got up the river under our own power.
By the time I got down beside him, he called me back to let me know that they'd cleared the wires from the propeller and they were underway again. So we let them go ahead of us up the river and followed them up.
Everything sort of happened so fast. By the time I realised that we were having a problem, until we actually got back out into the river and got our shit together, so to speak, there wasn't a great deal of time to reflect on it at all while it was happening. It was just happened so fast, really.
This reaction, that when things are turning to custard you're too busy to think about it, is another common thread through bar crossing stories. Many skippers find that it takes a while before they start working through the event and sorting out their thoughts.
It was a letdown on my part. I was pretty pissed off with myself, actually. I have to confess that my boss wasn't all that happy with the way things went on the bar that day. Yeah, they weren't overly impressed. They were happy we'd come in. We were full of fish. They were happy about that. But certainly they think we could have done it with a bit more style, I think.
It was quite a big sea on the bar that day, and I think we probably both underestimated the size of the swells before we came in. But that was quite a few years ago, and I think we've all learned a lot from the likes of that event. I suppose everybody was a bit younger and more bulletproof those days. I suppose everybody thinks differently, but it's always a relief to get out of there. It's probably mentally fairly stressful. I know myself, I've had the odd sleepless night after a bad crossing. Just through nerves, I suppose. It just shakes you up a bit, An
outsider, putting all the common threads in stories about crossing the bar together, cannot help but draw certain conclusions. You must always treat the sea with total respect, for it's always powerful and all too often seems capable of being frighteningly unpredictable. Things get very physical when the going gets rough, and even the most experienced of skippers suffers battle damage in bad situations. Mental reactions kick in afterwards, sometimes quite a bit afterwards. And events at sea can take a long-term emotional toll, not just on you, but on the people around you as well, especially your friends and families on shore, and your crew and their friends and families. Surely there can be no better people to tell you this than the people who've been there, done that. So over to them. Let the skippers tell you themselves the important stuff in their own words.
Crossing a bar is a risky business and always will be.
Some days you're heading towards the bar thinking it's not too bad, and you might get one out of the blue that might just stand up and you'll wear it.
We were coming in just on daylight, high tide, and we got picked up by one from nowhere. It fired clean on me back on the floor. Managed to jump up, pull the revs off, take my head to see which way we were going. By that stage we'd gone around about 180 degrees.
And I said the vessel doesn't just roll over, it actually gets physically picked up and thrown on its side.
My crew reckon I was thrown off that wheel about 3 times down on the deck, and I don't even remember being down there. He said you just bounced clean off the floor, straight back to the wheel.
I had both hands on the spinner, leaning down, trying to force the wheel around. Of course, when it did go down, I was going down, and the spokes on the other side of the wheel were going up, and I've still got the scar under the chin where I virtually knocked myself out.
Just the concussion of the waves hitting the boat was enough to drive her out of gear every time, and it takes about 140 pounds to drive that gear lever into gear.
When you get a scare on the bar, which can happen occasionally, you straight away you get a dry feeling in your mouth, and like standing off a bar at a distance, you get that, and associated with a dry mouth is you tend to have nervous pisses, and quite a few of those. You know, if you're sitting off the bar for an hour, you know, up to 8 or 10 of them, and I can tell you it's a relief.
You tend to go and have a nervous one first, and the knees are shaking sometimes afterwards if it has been a bit dodgy. That's usually when you know you've probably pushed it a bit far.
When I got round the corner, I lifted my hands off the steering wheel and said to the crew, I said, have a look at this. My hands were like that. My knuckles were white from holding on to the wheel tight and the throttle, and rolled myself a cigarette and tried to calm myself down as we went up the harbour.
Oh hell yeah. When you're upside down, all you can see is all the water in all your windows. It takes a wee while for it to go away.
Well, if it's a scary trip, you know, if you get the odd one that picks you up and heaves you and you're working hard on the wheel, you get a bit of an adrenaline rush, you know, and it's a roller coaster ride, you know, on a 30-foot, 40-foot boat, sort of 12 tons shooting down a wave. Knees go a bit weak sometimes if it's a bit scary.
I've actually stood there and seen my kneecaps bloody quivering, and there's nothing you can do to stop that, I'm afraid.
I usually empty my bladder before I arrive, just in case, you know.
Don't you worry many a time as my heart's being in my mouth. You just about want a pair of grundies there that have got a hole in the back of them so you don't make a mess of them.
I was down at the tip this day watching all the boats come in the tuna season, and a lot of the boats were getting a rough ride over the bar, and this particular boat got a wee way up the river, and he'd had quite a good ride in, rough, and I sort of looked over and he had a big smile on his face, and the crew were in the background laughing and pointing. And he had his bare legs, all he had on was this t-shirt, and the next thing he just up with a pair of underpants and threw them out over the overboard into the river. And I think it was his way of saying I was shitting myself and here's my underpants. Yeah, but he'd made it home.
I'd like my family to come home at night, and prefer they keep doing that for as long as I'm around anyway.
I like down the tip. I always see the boat go. I like to go down till it's gone out over the bar and gone to sea. And if I know the weather's good, I go down and I'll watch it come in if it's in the daytime. Quite often Stuart will say to me, I'll give you a ring when I'm coming up to the bar. And it might be a little bit rough or lumpy. He'll ring me when he's going up the river so I don't see him coming in. I don't think he wants me to be there sometimes.
And if anything ever happens on the boat, I never ever hear it from him. Never, never, never. If he's been taken by big waves, given him a big fright, or if anything's happened, I hear it from everybody else, but he never, ever says a word. Ever. Not once.
I don't like watching the boats come in when it's rough. I think it's the thought of being powerless, not being able to do anything if something happens. It's an eerie feeling, the stomach just turns inside out. We've got the memorial stone down at the tip now, and it's probably been there about 10 years. There were so many fishermen drowned at sea and some on the bar, and their bodies were never found. So the families really had nowhere to. Not like a cemetery, you could go up to the cemetery and place a bunch of flowers. The families had sort of nowhere because they had no body. And that was one of the reasons the memorial stone went to the tip, so they had somewhere to grieve. Oh, there's a lot of plaques there now, and I'd know every single one of them. Some of them were close, some good friends. But it also stands there for all the fishermen to see when they come in over the bar. And it made a lot of them feel very uncomfortable when it went up there.
No fisherman setting out to sea wants to be reminded of the consequences of getting it wrong. But perhaps it's useful to be reminded about the real importance of getting it right. And getting it right is what the next part of this video is all about.